Representative Hahn.
Thank you. My good colleague from California, Mr. Garamendi, thank you for devoting this special hour to the needs that we have in this country when it comes to our infrastructure. So I'm sort of excited because this week, at long last, barely in time before the Highway Trust Fund runs out of money, we're finally going to look at a long-term surface transportation bill to fund some of our nation's most critical infrastructure, which you've been talking about. Our nation's highways, our roads, our bridges, they've been neglected far too long. And today, we, unfortunately, have an infrastructure crisis. And not only do the American people rely on these roads to get from point A to point B safely and efficiently, the economy relies on them as well. I've been advocating, as you know, for more funding for our freight network. That's the series of highways and roads that go from our ports and our manufacturing hubs and that vast majority of our nation's freight travel on. Our nation's ports are hard at work, bringing in cargo from all over the world and exporting the products of American manufacturing to the growing overseas market. 22 million jobs nationwide rely on the efficient movement of goods in and out of our ports. These jobs rely on our nation's freight network. But for too long, we failed to invest in this important infrastructure and allowed it to crumble. Too many bridges along the freight network are in disrepair, and too many of our highways are unable to handle the modern levels of traffic. Now, many of us deal with the inconvenience of traffic every day, but this same traffic also costs both businesses and consumers money, and it threatens our economy's ability to stay competitive in the 21st global economy. As the roads on our freight network become more and more unreliable, the cost of transporting these goods increases, and American manufacturers and consumers pay the price. That's why I propose legislation that would drastically increase the funding of this freight network infrastructure. I thought it would be a good idea, and my bill would have used existing custom fees to provide $2 billion every year just to fund this freight network and the infrastructure projects without, by the way, raising any taxes. And I thought by investing in our freight network, we could give American businesses and manufacturers a competitive edge and spur job creation across the country. So the highway bill that we're considering this week provides just $750 million per year in freight funding. That's less than half what I was hoping for, but it's a start. And I hope that we can continue this conversation, find ways to invest in our ports and in this freight network at the level that our economy needs. So I hope that in coming days we can work in a bipartisan way to improve the highway bill and ensure that it passes before the end of this year. I would like to see the freight network expanded to include that last mile. Those are the roads that connect everything to our ports with highways and with rail. And when we talk about improving our roads, these last mile roads are often forgotten, even when they have the greatest amount of traffic. And I hope that we can expand the freight title to include funding for on-dock rail at our ports. Investing in on-dock rail would actually ease traffic on our highways by taking a lot of those trucks off the roads, and that cargo would come off the ships, go right onto the rail, and then to the end consumer. So this bill is a positive step. It's not perfect. It's not as good as I would like to have seen, but it is the right step for a long-term plan to invest in our nation's critical infrastructure. I'm looking forward to working with you, John Garamendi. Thank you for your leadership on this. Thank you for talking about why Make It in America makes sense. But none of that makes sense unless we can finally invest in this infrastructure in this country to, as you said, make this country great and make it work for everyone. So thank you for doing this tonight. And I yield
Representative Hahn, your leadership on the port issues are well known. You head up the Port Caucus here in the House of Representatives. You're constantly badgering all of us about the necessity of the ports being expanded. We know the eastern ports are facing the challenge of providing access for the Panamax ships, bigger ships being able to go through the Panama Canal. And we know that on the West Coast, as you've told us so many times, we need to improve the infrastructure on the West Coast for the efficiency so that we can keep those Panamax ships on the West Coast. And the freight issue that you talked about so eloquently here is absolutely on. It is the major part of the American transportation economy. We look at roads, we look at railroads, but the notion of